fact, just a few hours before, we're in a friend's sukkah with over 40 people enjoying the Chag. As we heard the rockets and the Iron Dome response to Jerusalem, we never could have imagined what was happening to our dear brothers and sisters in the South. Later in the day, we found out the reality of what was going on and saw people being murdered and begging for help in real time, help that couldn't get to them fast enough. Upon our eventual return to the United States, we were welcomed by Hamas rallies in the streets, SJP riots at colleges, Jewish students being attacked and unsafe on campuses, and right in our own backyard in Teaneck, or rather our front yard, Hamas rallies, violence, and violent threats, open anti-Semitic vitriol at our council meetings and from the Board of Education. Rather than being given a time to mourn our tragedy, the Jewish people were immediately put on the defensive, having to justify our very right to exist. Like many of you, I have felt the extreme divide among the Jewish people over the past year, and in Israel specifically over the past several months. This past April, at the World Zionist Congress, the rift in the room was intense. I attended as an Amit Mizrahi delegate. We are the centrist delegation, and the ones who have always, in the past at least, made peace between the extremes. There was no opportunity for that. Our calls for finding a way forward together went unanswered. The extremes were not interested in conversation. We felt dejected, and I came home shaking every night. I'm not sure why it takes a tragedy of tremendous magnitude for Am Yisrael to pull together, but now Am Yisrael is pulling together. Tens of thousands of soldiers dropped everything and immediately deployed to the south. Stories are emerging of people at Yishuvim that ran to help and save people at other Yishuvim and kibbutzim that were attacked, and many of them lost their lives. We now know just how many soldiers living abroad caught the first flight back to Israel to answer the Tzav Shmona, and many of them weren't even answering a Tzav, they just went as volunteers. And everyone across the country, no, across the world, is doing whatever they can to help. And some must send their children or spouses to war. Others organize rallies in support, tehillim, and airlifts, air gear, and supplies. Some help Chayalim to get home to serve, and still others, like a friend of mine in Israel, even think to cook gluten-free food to send to the Chayalim with celiac. Mr. Rogers always used to say, look for the helpers. Today, everyone in Am Yisrael is a helper. We have all received our Tzav Shmona, and we are all helping. Thousands of people in Israel line up to give blood every day and wait for hours to do so without a bit of complaint. And yes, we are all Jews. I waited in line for 7 hours one day, and about 3 hours in, a siren sounded. It was loud, meaning that it was in our zone. We all ran inside to take cover in the shelter of the stairwells. And afterwards, about 700 people went back to their place on the line. Because it isn't a time for me before you, it's a time for Achi, how can I help? And we all need to be the helpers. People both in Israel and all over the world are clearing the shelves of stores for gear for the Chayalim. Here in Teaneck, we have a Chayalim store where we supply units with gear and medical equipment and send it to Israel. People are baking challah for split of the Chayalim and the hostages. People are reciting Tehillim all day long. 20,000 people in Crown Heights gathered to pray for Israel. 10,000 gathered in New York, in London, Paris, Boston, Miami. A Haredi man stood in the airport and paid for 250 reservists to get back to Israel. Airless supplies are being sent. Seminaries and yeshivot are stocking store shelves, babysitting, making tzitzit for Chayalim, stepping up in any way possible. I am the current board chair of Amit, which runs about 100 schools in Israel. We're responsible for 40,000 children in Israel, including 4,400 from Sderot, who have been displaced. We have moved many of these children and their families to our 2 Kfarei Noar youth villages, while others have been relocated to hotels. We're providing therapy, support, physical, financial, and emotional to all of these children, and will continue to do so for as long as it's needed. And if you want to help in that effort, you are welcome to be in touch with me. Another movement that I want to inform you about is a new group that was founded to stand up locally for the Jewish community and make sure its interests and its concerns are being advocated for. It's called BCJAC, or BCJAC, Bergen County Jewish Action Committee, and we need everyone's help to combat local anti-Semitism and anti-Israel indoctrination. So you can reach out to Bergen County JAC at gmail.com. But the first action item is that if you live in Teaneck, please make sure you go vote for this Board of Ed election. It is imperative that we have representation on that board. These are just a few of about 1 million efforts. We are Am Yisrael, and while these have perhaps been the worst few weeks in our recent history since the Holocaust, we will unite to fight, and we will not be silent and passive while our brothers and sisters are under attack. We will not be silent while the schools in our towns are invaded by agitators. With prayers and hope that Hashem will recognize how his Am is pulling together, Mi Ka'amcha Yisrael, and bring the Yeshua that we so desperately need.